we're taking an exclusive journey through the private residences of Neil Armstrong, the man who delivered humanity's most famous words from the moon, yet spent his life trying to escape the spotlight here on Earth. Neil Alden Armstrong wasn't born destined for fame, but rather for the vast farmlands of Ohio. Born on August 5, 1930, in Wapakoneta, Ohio, Armstrong's early life was defined by constant movement. His father, Stephen, worked as a state auditor, which meant the family relocated 16 times across Ohio during Neil's childhood. This nomadic lifestyle might have unsettled other children, but for Armstrong, it cultivated an adaptability that would serve him well in the cockpits of experimental aircraft and eventually in the cramped quarters of a lunar module. At the time of his death, in 2012, Neil Armstrong had accumulated a net worth of $8 million, a surprisingly modest fortune for someone who had achieved the impossible. Unlike many celebrities who capitalize on their fame, Armstrong deliberately chose a path of privacy and service. In July 2019, his family earned $12 million auctioning off some of his most prized possessions, including childhood mementos and paraphernalia from his historic moon landing. Armstrong's relationship with his homes tells the story of a man trying to balance historical significance with human normalcy. From his childhood house in Wapakoneta to his famous Elago residence during the Apollo years, and finally to his beloved farm in Lebanon, Ohio, each residence reveals different facets of America's most reluctant hero. These are the places where the first man on the moon could simply be Neil, the Ohio farm boy who happened to make one giant leap for mankind. Our journey begins where Armstrong's dreams first took flight, literally. In 1944, when Neil was 13 years old, Stephen and Viola Armstrong moved their family, including Neil and his younger siblings, June and Dean, to the house at 601 West Benton Street in Wapakoneta. This modest, 1908-built home, spanning just 1,500 square feet with 3 bedrooms, would become the launching pad for humanity's greatest adventure. The house, with its current value around $102,000, remains a private residence, though it's marked by a historical plaque that draws visitors from around the world. What makes this house extraordinary isn't its size or grandeur, it's what happened within its walls. Here, Neil explored his fascination with flying by reading aviation magazines and building model airplanes. The teenager, who would one day pilot humanity to the moon, spent countless hours in this house, dreaming of flight while constructing miniature aircraft with the same precision he would later apply to spaceflight. Karen Tullis, who has owned the home since 1988, has done an incredible job preserving the history of the home. She's transformed Neil's childhood bedroom into her office, but the space still echoes with the dreams of a boy who earned his pilot's license before his driver's license. Armstrong completed flying lessons at nearby Port Cuneta Airport and earned his pilot's license on his 16th birthday, even before receiving a driver's license, a detail that perfectly captures his priorities and the rural Ohio culture that shaped him. The Benton Street house represents something profound about Armstrong's character. His roots were always firmly planted in Ohio soil, even as his ambitions soared toward the stars. During Karen's time at the house, she's found a few treasures that were left behind, physical remnants of the Armstrong family's time there, small artifacts that connect us to the boy who would become the most famous explorer in human history. Walking through this house today, you can almost sense the quiet determination that would define Armstrong's life. It was simply a working-class American home where big dreams were nurtured through hard work, family values, and an unwavering belief that with enough dedication, you could reach for the moon and actually touch it. If Wapakoneta was where Armstrong's dreams took flight, then El Lago, Texas, was where those dreams became reality. The Armstrong family lived in Elago for most of the 1960s, during NASA's Apollo and Gemini missions, leading all the way up to 1971, when Neil retired and left NASA. Armstrong took out a $30,000 loan to buy the newly built home in 1964, a modest ranch-style house that would witness the most intense period of his life. The house sits on a 17,102 square foot lot and features 2,883 square feet of living space. But numbers don't capture what made this place special. It was the epicenter of space-age domesticity, where America's first moonwalking family tried to maintain normalcy while the entire world watched. This is a downright groovy mid-century modern house, complete with googie roofline and a living room with vaulted ceilings that somewhat resembles the bridge of a futuristic spaceship. The house perfectly embodied the optimistic, forward-looking spirit of the 1960s space program. Original features include a wood beam, living room ceiling, stone fireplace, pink pool decking, and original staircase railings, details that today seem like artifacts from a more hopeful era when the future was full of rockets and moon landings. The Elago House became famous not just for who lived there, but for what it represented during those pivotal weeks in July 1969. Mrs. Jan Armstrong, wife of Apollo 11 Commander Neil Armstrong, and their two children, Mark, who was 6, and Eric, who was 12, maintained a regular household routine as the astronauts began their final phase of countdown. Armstrong and fellow astronaut Ed White, who died during the Apollo 1 mission in 1967, bought 3 lots of land to split between them, built houses, and lived next to each other for years. This created a unique neighborhood culture where space exploration wasn't just a job, it was a way of life shared among families who understood the extraordinary risks and rewards of reaching for the stars. The house's kidney-shaped pool became an iconic backdrop for family photos that would later grace magazine covers worldwide. The pool tiling, the brick, the pink concrete, this is all original. If you look at older photos of Armstrong and his family swimming, you will see this exact detail. Every element of this house was preserved in photographs that documented not just the Armstrong family, but the American dream during the space age. After conquering the moon, where do you go to find peace on Earth? For Neil Armstrong, the answer was a 185-acre farm outside Lebanon, Ohio, where he could trade the complexities of fame for the simple rhythms of agricultural life. Neil and his wife Janet bought the dairy farm in 1971, the year Neil accepted the university professor of aerospace engineering position at University of Cincinnati. This wasn't just a career change, it was a deliberate retreat from the public eye. In July 1971, the Armstrongs paid $225,000 for a 200-acre dairy farm outside Lebanon, Ohio, about a 30-minute drive from Cincinnati. The property included a 4,700 square foot house that was built in 1947, giving Armstrong and his family substantially more space than their previous homes, but more importantly, complete privacy from the relentless attention that followed America's first moonwalker. The farm seemed to be an important part of Armstrong's sense of balance. A friend once explained Armstrong's devotion to the place this way: "You understand that you're a short-term phenomenon, like the mosquitoes that come in the spring and the fall. You get a perspective on yourself. You're getting back to the fundamentals of the planet." Neil feels that way because we've talked about it. This farm represented Armstrong's philosophical return to Earth in the most literal sense. Here was a man who had walked on another world, yet found meaning in the ancient human activities of raising livestock and working the soil. The couple lived at the farm with their 2 sons until 1994, when the couple divorced after 38 years of marriage. For over 2 decades, this farm served as Armstrong's primary residence and his refuge from celebrity. The farm is now called Maple Hill Farm, who say they've been in business since 1999, but their cattle have been around longer, possibly of a heritage with a direct line from Armstrong's herd. Even today, Armstrong's agricultural legacy continues, with his cattle bloodline potentially still grazing the same fields where the first moonwalker found peace among the rolling hills of Ohio. Armstrong's final chapter unfolded in Cincinnati, where he settled after leaving the farm life behind. Neil Armstrong lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, a city known for its vibrant art scene, beautiful architecture, and rich history. After decades of avoiding the spotlight, Armstrong chose a city residence that reflected his desire for quiet dignity in his later years. Armstrong's house in Cincinnati features typical Midwestern charm, with a spacious layout and pleasant neighborhood surroundings. The house has 3 bedrooms and 4.5 bathrooms, over 3,114 square feet of space. This home represented a compromise between the complete isolation of farm life and the urban conveniences he needed as he aged. It was here that Armstrong spent his final years, far from the Texas suburbs where he'd trained for space, and the Ohio farms where he'd sought solitude. This was the final home of the astronaut. His widow, Carol Armstrong, still owns this property. The house stands as a testament to Armstrong's desire for privacy, even in death. It's a comfortable, unpretentious residence that mirrors the man who always insisted he was just doing his job, even when that job involved representing all of humanity on another world. The Cincinnati years marked Armstrong's complete transformation from public figure to private citizen. While he had served on corporate boards and taught at the university, by his final years, he had achieved what he'd always wanted: the ability to live as a regular person in a regular neighborhood, distinguished only by his character rather than his fame. After developing complications following bypass surgery, Armstrong passed away on August 25, 2012, in a Cincinnati hospital at age 82. His final home became the place where the world said goodbye to the first lunar explorer, but also where his family could grieve privately for the man they knew simply as Neil, husband, father, and grandfather who had happened to make the most extraordinary journey in human history. Neil Armstrong's homes tell a story that transcends real estate and speaks to something fundamental about the American character. From the modest boyhood home in Wapakoneta, where a teenager built model airplanes and earned his pilot's license, to the space-age Elago House, where history was made and witnessed, to the peaceful Lebanon farm, where fame was traded for the simple rhythms of agricultural life, and finally to the quiet Cincinnati residence, where a legend lived his final years as just another neighbor. Each home reveals a different facet of America's most reluctant hero. What strikes you most about touring these properties isn't their grandeur. Indeed, by celebrity standards, they're remarkably modest. Rather, it's how perfectly they reflect Armstrong's values: functionality over flash, substance over show, privacy over publicity. The Elago House exists from an era when astronauts were genuine heroes, when the whole country held its breath during space missions, and when children dreamed of becoming explorers rather than influencers. The Lebanon farm speaks to the timeless American ideal of returning to the land, of finding authentic meaning in honest work. The Cincinnati house reminds us that even legends grow old and simply want to live with dignity and peace. In our current age of social media and manufactured celebrity, Armstrong's housing choices seem almost revolutionary in their ordinariness. Here was a man who had achieved the ultimate human adventure, yet consistently chose the path of humility and privacy. His homes weren't showplaces designed to impress. They were sanctuaries designed to shelter a very private man who understood that true accomplishment doesn't require constant display. As we conclude our tour through Neil Armstrong's homes, we're reminded that the most extraordinary people often live the most ordinary lives by choice. Armstrong's legacy isn't just about that first step on the moon, it's about the thousands of steps he took through these modest homes, always moving toward authenticity, always seeking the kind of peace that can only come from knowing who you are when the cameras stop rolling and the crowds go home. If you've enjoyed this intimate look at the private spaces of America's space hero, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive tours of celebrity homes. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating places where history was made and legends were born.